Imagine a world where the lines of reality blur with the fantastical. Embark on journeys from humble beginnings to the pinnacles of literary greatness. On the Writer's Corner, we delve into the lives of unique wordsmiths, known for their compelling storytelling. They are artisans who craft fantastical realms, etched in our memory long after the final page is turned. Every tale begins with a single word, a single idea. Authors create sensations that keep you on the edge of your seat. Witness how they transform setbacks into stepping stones, use refusals to spark growth and turn rejections into catalysts for new inspiration. Witness the diversity in writing as it gives birth to a vast array of genres, from drama to mystery to children's stories, fantasy, and reality. Join us as we uncover sources of inspiration and the magic that defines the author's craft. Find out how authors breathe life into their characters and meticulously craft narratives and plots that captivate readers. Get a sneak peek into upcoming works and join us as we celebrate literary greatness only on the Writer's Corner. We don't just celebrate best-selling Amazon and New York Times authors, but also indie authors. Join us on the journey from the birth of a tale to the creation of a masterpiece, only on the Writer's Corner live show. Stay tuned.
Hi, can you hear me now? Hi, Gina. Oh, she's on mute. There she is. Yay. There she is. All right.
Can you hear me now?
Hi. So we're global today. We are the US, we are England, and we are South Africa. So we are global today, aren't we?
Indeed.
All right, we're going to dive right in. So, what's one key moment in your life that pushed you from surviving to truly thriving? And I know we all want to know because it inspires all of us.
I think the paradox for me is falling down a mountain. And I think many people would think that was quite the opposite. And at the time, it was pretty dramatic and pretty negative. But for me, it created a gift in that having to deal with disability, I created a very different approach to personal empowerment and to leadership. And I'd like to think that I would have done it anyway, but I'm honest enough to know that that was the catalyst that created a way of being for myself and a way of working with clients that has now spanned well over 30 years and has been highly successful.
That's amazing.
Most people live with the happiness when. I'll be happy when I've got the perfect job, the perfect relationship, I've got the house that I love, I've got children that tidy their bedroom and do their homework without being nagged, I've got a dog that takes itself for a walk, all of those things. Now, the problem with that is they are all in the future. And we set ourselves such high criteria that have to be met, all of which have to be met. And as a result, we're never there. And as soon as one criteria is met, generally speaking, people add in another. So I've got a job, I've got promotion, but I'm going to be happy when I get the next promotion or when my bank balance is bigger. So for me, the secret to happiness, and happiness is I believe, a choice. Lots of terrible things can be happening, but there are still things within my life that I can choose to be happy about. And so my choice is I'll be happy every time a friend rings, or when the cat makes me laugh, or when I've got a nice cup of tea, or the plumbing is working and I've got a hot shower. I choose to be happy, and I choose to be in the moment of that happiness as I go through each day. And so I focus on what's working and what I can do rather than what's not working and what I can't. And the result of that is because where we put our focus, our energy goes, when we focus on all of the rubbish that's happening in our lives, and everybody has to deal with that. And in reality, I've probably had more than my fair share of that to deal with. When you focus on that, it seems to expand. Whereas when you focus on the good things in your life and you are grateful for those, that too expands. And so for me, it's a very active choice. I choose to be happy.
Amen. 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 You've touched on some very important things about finding the silver lining and everything. And this teaches us how to be resilient in life so that we can face those things and those challenges. But it is a choice, isn't it? We have to make that choice. And that's the thing that I think is really important there. And that choice can be made every day, every second, every minute if you're doing baby steps with it, you know. Can you share a story of someone who found their true purpose through the pathways that you outline?
I think many of my clients have found their true purpose, but I think it starts with living a life with purpose. Lots of people think that if I'm going to live a life of purpose, it's got to be the big stuff, it's got to be global, otherwise, it's not worth it. But the reality is that our purpose is about being authentically who we are. So rather than working to our conditioning, what our parents or our teachers said we should be, or trying to compare ourselves with other people, I think when we are being authentic to who we are and we live a life intentionally, whether that's doing the washing up and doing the best job you can, then that leads to people having a sense of something more. And for me, that's all about service. And so whether that's service to other people, to the environment, to animals, whatever that may be, it is about having a sense of wanting to make, I believe, a living legacy, something that's going to make a positive difference. But I just want to qualify that, if I may. Again, people think it's got to be the big stuff, but we leave a living legacy in every word we utter or not, how and when, every action we take or not, how and when. And let me just give you one example, because I think it's such a simple example, but it's so powerful. If you think about the energy behind every word that we use, that lands on the person we're speaking to. Let's think of the word thank you. So if I said, oh, ladies, thank you so much for having me on the program. I'm really grateful. Thank you. That has a very different energy for me to saying to you, thank you. They're the same word, but they have a very different power. And I think it's so easy. Most of us are 95% of the time we are working habitually. So we don't let our thoughts, our beliefs, our actions and our words cross our conscious mind. And so we will say things not realizing how that lands. And just because you think you have said something in a particular way doesn't mean that that's the way the other person has taken it. And so you need to be really mindful that every word you utter, and when you don't say anything, you are leaving a legacy. And that can be negative, neutral, or positive. But I would say to everybody, leave a positive living legacy. And so people I've worked with most of the time, it's recognizing their worth and what they have to offer. And so most often people have thought about something that they would like to do or be, and it's very small beer. And I have enabled them to expand themselves. And that doesn't necessarily mean more people, but it means being more of themselves, being more authentically who they are and why they're here.
Amen. Very much.
Mm-hmm. Yes. It's a good question. And I think one of the challenges that people mix up, that they misinterpret self-belief to ego. Self-belief is not about saying, I'm wonderful and I'm better than you. Self-belief is actually owning the amazing human being that you are. And I talk about having enlightened, authentic power of oneself. That doesn't mean you have dominion over other people. It doesn't make me better than anybody else. But I've got to do the deep dive work on myself to truly know that I am enough. I'm not broken, but there's always development. Our whole life is about learning and development if we choose. And Mary was talking about challenges. We don't tend to grow when life is easy. It's when the challenges come that we learn how to deal with that. And through that process that we grow. And that's part of life. Life happens and life can be challenging in all sorts of ways. So it's not the challenge that defines us. It's what we do with it. And you have a choice. Back to the choices. Everything we do is a choice. You can choose to be a victim to those circumstances. Poor me. It's why has this happened to me? It's terrible. It's not fair. Or you can choose to think, this has happened to me and this is giving me a gift if I choose to find it. So I've learned to walk twice as an adult. I ran my award-winning school for 20 years, for the most part from a wheelchair. And although I can now walk short distances, I've had an internal spinal stimulator. what I recognized is that out of that adversity, I have grown hugely. But I had a choice. I could have stayed at home. I could have retired from headship as soon as I became disabled. In fact, before I started, if you like. But I chose not to. And then I made an active choice that it was going to be about how could I make sure that the children and the staff in my school had the very best educational experience possible. So again, not focusing on me. So let me give you a couple of examples. After my second failed spinal operation, I was back in a wheelchair. It had to take me 18 months prior to this to walk to the bottom of my very little garden. And for 3 months, I could walk that far. And then I ruptured another disc and I had failed back surgery. I came home from hospital, and if nobody left me out a cup and filled the kettle, I couldn't make a drink. The only thing I could do is watch television or read. Within 5 days, I was back at school. And to start with part-time, and within 2 weeks, I was back there full-time. Was I fit? No. However, my mouth patently works, my eyes, my hands, my brain worked, and there were people there who could do the heavy lifting. So I could go and be useful, do something that I enjoyed. I'm not saying this is for everybody, but I could do something where I felt that I was being useful, and that my disability was not the major part of my life. I dealt with that in the best way I could, but ultimately my focus was on how do I make a difference to other people? And I think, and as I say, I'm not suggesting this is for everybody. You have to do what's right for you. But the alternative, I think, if I had stayed at home, and daytime television doesn't do it for me, I have to say. And there's only so many books you can read before you've had enough of that. So if I'd stayed at home, I think that I would have, within an amount of time, started to see myself as a victim. But by going and being of service, doing something that was of value, that gave me the impetus to actually not only do something of value, but actually helped me get better, because I was focusing on what I could do rather than what I couldn't.
And it's very, very, very valuable. Thank you for sharing all of this with us. And I hope this really can touch people and reach them that are watching this. It makes a difference what you did. And you could have gone the other way, but you made the choice. Like we've been talking about the choice to do that. And you've just talked to us about all this. Will you kind of expand on some strategies that you recommend for handling moments when life feels like a dead end or there's no use? Or what about people who just feel like it's just not worth it? It's not going to change anything. I'm not going to get any better. It's not going to, when there's places like that.
I think the starting point for me is collecting gratitudes, because even on the darkest day, and I don't want people to run away with the fact, that it was all rainbows and unicorns. It wasn't. There were some pretty dark days. And I've lived with chronic pain since 1983. I find that when I'm doing something I'm interested in, that's great pain control. It's great distraction. But for me, I think first and foremost, I think anybody who's really struggling, start to collect gratitudes and make it easy. And so for me, gratitudes make it very easy to recalibrate the brain. And I use this a lot, particularly with people who've got low mood or depression, or people who are struggling to find a sense of themselves. If you start with being grateful, that really recalibrates the brain and enables you to think in a very different way. But I collect gratitudes in a very specific way. One, it has to be easy, and I'm looking for as many gratitudes during the day. Now, when you are being grateful, you are in the moment. You can't worry about the past. You're not anxious about the future. You are in the moment. And so that could be the raindrops on a window making a pretty pattern. For me, good plumbing, a good cup of tea, a conversation with a friend are always really important opportunities for gratitude. But they can be that actually I managed to finish a piece of work, or I've listened to a beautiful piece of music, or something made me laugh. You make it very easy, and during the day you collect those gratitudes. Nature's a really great source of gratitude for me. I love my garden. I'm as I sit here, it's dark now, but I'm looking over my internal courtyard, which in the summer is just full of flowers. And that gives me a great sense of gratitude. But it could be watching the clouds. I make it easy. And then just before I go to bed, I scan the day and I choose between 3 and 5 of those gratitudes. And so when I go into to sleep, I'm going to sleep on a very positive note. So gratitude is one absolute must for and I would say do it with your kids, and it's a lovely bedtime activity to do with your children, is for them to share their gratitudes and you to share yours as they're getting ready for bed. As I say, living in the moment and being recognizing that if you are in the moment, you can't be worried about the past and you can't be anxious about the future. And if you want a couple of really good exercises around living in the moment, get a piece of really good quality chocolate and an orange stick and eat 1 square of that chocolate with an orange stick, and allow the taste to build up on your tongue. So you become more and more aware of the texture and the taste on your tongue. And if you're doing that, you can't actually be thinking about other things. Getting out in nature, really, really great. Things that make you laugh, laughing and being out in nature and exercise or release endorphins. All of those things are really simple. They don't cost you any money, but they're very powerful.
Amen. Oh my gosh. Yes, absolutely. 100%. I know.
Mhm. Change is one of the constants in life. There are 3 constants: death, taxes, and change. And interesting that we change from the moment we're conceived to the moment we pass, and yet we fear change. And I think it's time. The pace of change has never been greater, and those who are prepared to hold on to uncertainty and to the capacity to change are those who are going to thrive most. And I think part of this is recognizing, why are you so fearful of change? We like to stay in our comfort zone. I call it our familiarity zone. And the danger with that is that we stay in that even though it's uncomfortable, because it's what we know. And yet, if we all stayed in what we know, ultimately, we would never have left caves. We'd still be living in caves. And so part of this is being able to live with the uncertainty and step out of that comfort zone. And if you can do that and just take that one little step and then think, well, then I'm going to take the next one and then the next one. Before you know where you are, you have traversed a huge journey. And I think particularly when people are in pain, and I would include emotional pain, physical pain, mental pain, spiritual pain, they are all things that we need to deal with in life. And ultimately, I think the first thing is to recognize that in that moment, you have a choice. And it may not be an easy choice, but I think if you make it moment by moment, rather than trying to think about, my life in, what am I going to do in 3 months, 6 months, 9 months? I think it's very easy then to become overwhelmed. I'd like to share a story, if I may, about limiting beliefs. Now, I ran my school for 20 years, and while I was a principal or head teacher, I went and did a load of other jobs in order to bring an income into school because our budget was so dire. And so I worked for the National College of Leadership, the London Institute. I was a workforce reform advisor for the DFES, all sorts of things, not at the same time, only one at a time. But I always had a driver drive me from my home to wherever the job was, and then they would drive me back. Now, after I left headship, and I left headship in 2004, I started my own business, and I did lots more training, and I went to do some training in NLP, neuro-linguistic programming. And I wanted to see how people were using it. So I went off to watch all sorts of people, and I ended up at the Excel Centre in London with Tony Robbins. And he talked about a course that he was running in California early on in the first day, but I dismissed it. And I thought, how could I manage that? I haven't got a travel wheelchair. I have these days, but I didn't then. I don't think I'd manage it. I dismissed it out of hand. Well, that night they did the firewalk, and by this time I'd had an internal spinal stimulated fitted in 2004. That's like an internal TENS machine. And I thought, I want to do the firewalk. So with somebody holding both hands, I walked across the hot coals in bare feet. And as I sat back down in my wheelchair, I was absolutely ecstatic. It's the furthest I'd walked, but I was determined to do it. And as I sat back in my wheelchair, the guy after me was a double amputee, no legs below the knee. He turned himself up on his hands and he walked the hot coals on his hands. And in that second, I realized that I was self-limiting. So I booked my ticket, I booked my flight that night, I went off to California, I did the course, I did the rest of Tony Robbins' courses, became a senior leader for him. I would never have done any of that if it hadn't been for that man. I've no idea who he is. And I've shared this story now with hundreds of thousands of people, because my challenge to you ladies and to our listeners is, how are you self-limiting? Because we all do it. And if you think about that man walking hot coals on his hands, what could you do that at the moment you're saying, I can't do that because?
Oh, Gina, thank you so much for sharing that story. That is, wow. I can just, wow today. Thank you, Gina. I know how amazing you are, and you're just so much more amazing every time I see you. So you're just going to keep getting more amazing, I think. I just thank you for sharing all this. Would you show the cover of your book really quickly? Because we do have to go. And it's so beautiful. I love it. And we're so grateful to have you here today with us and to share all of this with all our listeners. Everyone in the world needs to hear what your words are. Everyone does. And if we just hit replay every day, we'd probably be doing so much better than we are, because you'd be that constant reminder of, okay, you got a choice. Okay, you can do this. Okay, get up off your butt. All right, you're okay. Come on. So
it's my absolute pleasure. And I think so many people.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for joining us on the Writer's Corner live show. 30 minutes of insightful author conversations with some of the biggest names in the industry, including award-winning authors and international indie sensations. Join us on the next episode of the Writer's Corner live show.